This week on a global episode of The Grid spanning 3 continents and countless time zones, we've got travel photographer Dave Williams from the UK, and all the way from the future, we have Photoshop wizard Unmesh Dinda joining us from the opposite side of the globe in Mumbai, India. We're talking about all the Photoshop Lightroom updates at Adobe MAX, and the second segment, we're going to dedicate it to an AMA, Ask Us Anything, so get in the chat, ask us questions, and it all starts in 60 seconds.
Grid is brought to you by Tamron. Check out their 28 to 75 millimeter f2.8 lens. It's for Sony full frame mirrorless. It's awesome. Go to tamron-usa.com. And Westcott. Check out their new Rapid Box switch. It has 9 light modifiers and 13 quick swap light inserts. Check it out right now at fjwestcott.com. And ProPhoto, the light shaping company. Check out the ProPhoto B1X. Power in all the right places. Go to prophoto.com/US. And Platypod, the tripod alternative that is changing the world. Everybody has a Platypod. You should too. Go to platypod.com.
Well, hey, everybody. It's just me. But I got a surprise. So we actually, so Scott's out at Adobe MAX. He's teaching some classes out there, and Adobe's got a lot of announcements we're going to go over with Max. But I have joining me via the interwebs 2 KelbyOne instructors. I have Unmesh Dinda and Dave Williams. They're joining from all over the world. So we got Dave over there in the UK. So what time is it there, Dave?
It's 9 p.m. It's dark. It's cold. It's been raining, but it's all okay. It's good. We got this.
And then Unmesh, now you're actually joining us from the future, right?
Oh yeah, future. It's about 1:30 a.m. and the party is just about to start.
All right, so it's literally Thursday for you, right?
Yes.
It's Thursday.
Yes.
So you're way ahead of us. Like, me and Dave are going to be way behind. You're way ahead of us. You got all the scoop on all the new stuff that's happening tomorrow, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, so guys, big announcement. I going to jump right into it. So, well, a couple things, starting off, we are going to be doing later on in the show a segment where you can ask Dave, you can ask Unmesh, you can ask myself, ask us anything. So if you can jump into the chat, you can ask us. We were moderating the chat, and we'll be able to take your questions and answer that. But until we get there, and then later we'll also have a contest. And for that contest, we're going to be giving away a $50 gift card to Lens Pro to Go, which is an awesome place if you need to try out all that new gear that's coming out between Photokina and what do you got? Photo Plus coming up and all that stuff going on. So, and also, Dave, you're giving something away on the show, right? Something that's near and dear.
I can see it on your desk. Let me grab it. Oh, there it is. Erik, you ruined it.
There are 2 of those.
Giving away a Platypod.
Ruined the magic.
Now, you've got something really cool with Platypod right over in the UK, right?
Well, yeah. So Platypod wasn't readily available in the UK or Europe. If you wanted one, it was more expensive than it is there in the States, and they didn't have a decent distributor. So I became a decent distributor. You can now get Platypod in the UK and Europe through Amazon Prime, and I've just restocked. So there's going to be plenty of Ultras landing there tomorrow or the next day, and there's loads of Maxes and multi-kits, and you can get them right here, right now.
Cool.
Wow. I need a distributor here as well.
I'm telling you.
I don't have
Hey, Dave knows people. We'll hook you up.
Oh, wow. Sure. Would love that.
So we got some people in the chat just saying hello before we get into the topics we're going to talk about. Kathy is saying, hey, Erik. I'm sure she's saying hey to you guys, too, over there, Unmesh and Dave. Kevin Scott actually says, hiya, Dave, Unmesh, and Erik from Chile, Wisconsin. Yeah, it's not that way here. I think the other day it was in the 90s, so it's getting a little ridiculous here. And we got Tony from Norway saying hello. Rose, hey, all my favorite guys. Daniel's saying, heyo, Unmesh. And I'm not sure if that means something to you. And then Ben says, glad to see everyone. And Kathy's asking you, Dave, if you're missing Team Epic yet.
Oh, am I, have you got me? Yeah, I miss Team Epic massively. I was the last man standing. I was there in Austria on my own. So I decided to go up a mountain after you guys had all left. But yeah, I miss Team Epic. We need to get like a midway reunion until the next one. So yeah, of course. Hi, Kathy. And Peter and Nando.
Yeah, and
and Pisco and Mimo and Scott and Jeff and of course Mikey.
So what you're talking about is actually last weekend we had what was it, last weekend or the weekend before that? Anyways, it was on the 6th. I don't even know time. Unmesh, you tell us. You're in the future.
What?
We had the photo walk. So Scott had his photo walk. We were over in Europe. We had his photo walk in Innsbruck, but it's across the whole globe. And actually, the contest for the photo walk just closed the other day. So we're gonna at the end of the month be announcing the winners of this year's photo walk. So you can definitely check that out at worldwidephotowalk.com. But yeah, so I want to jump right into the first topic that we want to talk about before we get into the answering questions. And if you have any questions, just throw them in the chat. Is these Max announcements that came out. So I know I was tuned into the keynote. I know you, Unmesh, you've been deep into this, and I've seen you've done videos on this already. Now, Dave, you've been kind of the sleeper cell in here of you're not really doing much.
I've been so busy with all the retouching and stuff and all the writing I've been doing that I haven't really kept up to date. I've glanced over the updates and yeah, not much. I need to get myself up to speed, I'll be honest.
Then Unmesh and I can blow your mind here because there's some cool stuff going on in Photoshop and Lightroom. So yeah, so if you don't know, Adobe's having their big conference MAX out in LA, and Scott's out there teaching, and they've done a lot of interesting updates for Photoshop, Lightroom CC. One of the things that's a highlight for me is I don't want to call it stupid, it's a little thing, but finally, after all these years that I've been using Photoshop, the undo actually works like every other program. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's really cool when you actually try it. I was working in Photoshop today, and you just hit undo, and then if you hit undo again, you hit Control Z. Guess what it does? It steps backwards one. And then you hit it again, and it steps backwards one. And you don't have to hold down another key to do it. It's crazy. That
is one of the updates that I was looking at.
Yeah.
And I think
that's crazy.
I think that's going to have to be like you're going to have to create entire new habits because of that, because of having Command Option Z, Control Alt Z, Control Shift Z. Anyway, Command Option Z. Because you've got into that habit, you're going to have to learn an entire new habit, and it's going to have to become autopilot once again in a different way. So yeah, I like the fact that there's that update, but I'm going to have to learn it.
Yes, this is true. This is true. But I will tell you, since they started using copy and paste, like every other program uses copy and paste after this last update, that was very easy to get used to because everything else works that way. So I got a feeling this one's going to be pretty quick, and it's something that I just, I remember starting out in Photoshop, 15 so odd years ago, and just being like, why does this program work different than every other program that I know?
Yeah, it's just breaking. It is breaking that habit and making it autopilot, and that's the thing. A lot of stuff that we do in Photoshop is autopilot, and so that means that when we write tutorials, we have to think about what buttons our fingers are naturally going to. So it's that autopilot thing. Anyway, there's my
Unmesh. What's one of your favorite features that was released in Photoshop?
The brand new content aware fill. That was like the highlight of the update, according to me, because they gave us a whole workspace just for the content aware fill, and removing stuff or removing any distracting objects has become easier than ever. So there's a whole new workspace just for the content aware fill. It allows you to pick where do you want to sample from when you replace a thing. So earlier it was all automatic. Now you can choose where Photoshop picks from. You can also tell Photoshop, okay, so you can mirror the stuff or you can rotate the stuff to adjust it, and it magically removes anything. That was absolutely amazing. According to me, that was the best update.
Oh yeah, and I'll tell you, it is really cool and I haven't dived into it too deep, but what's really cool about it, and I think what really people need to know, it's kind of like when we got all the things for doing selections, and we actually got the ability to go in and really fine tune the selections. What this is with, and what Unmesh was talking about with having that dialogue or the whole basically interface now with Content Aware, you have this ability with so much control to precisely tell Photoshop, where do you want to sample from? You used to be able to fool it, you know. I know, Unmesh, you probably were teaching people how to do that back in the day, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. So there's a workaround to do it without the update. I mean, in the
Correct.
layer, you actually just hide those areas. So Photoshop has no option where to sample from but those areas. But now it's a feature. And there are some additional features which were not accessible before, like rotation and sizing and all of that stuff, which is now available. So it means, like, for example, you have a butterfly, right? So you have a symmetrical object like a butterfly, and the left feather is broken, and you can actually select Content Aware, select that, and then you can tell Photoshop, okay, so you can take a sample from the right feather and mirror it. So you have the option, that checkbox, to mirror it, so allowing Photoshop to mirror it, so it can mirror the feathers and automatically does the stuff for you. So there's rotation, mirroring, and resizing as well, which helps.
Oh yeah, and yeah, I mean, it's just the ability to really dive in and tweak it. I think that's really cool. So another feature that and my features, I think, are gonna be more along the lines of stuff that it was that stuff back in the day that I didn't understand, and now it's like, oh, they're finally making it like everything else. And one of them was auto commit. So Unmesh, you played around with that at all? The auto commit?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Isn't that one of those things that just,
it's
like,
amazing?
Yeah.
It's like, why are you doing that to us? I mean, whenever you crop a photo, you have to commit it. Again and again, the dialog box shows up. Whenever you want to place something into Photoshop, you have to commit it. That was crazy. So now you just click anywhere else and it does automatically, which is more efficient.
Well, and I think that's the word right there. It's efficient. You're not having to, like, click and then hit OK, or then, oh, I forgot to commit that change, you know, stuff like that. It's just you click off and it commits the change. Same thing with text. Text is now where you can actually just, when you go to a text layer, you can just select it and edit the text. And then you click off it, it commits the change. So really cool stuff.
You know,
what else for you, Unmesh, has really stood out besides Content Aware?
Talking about text, you just talked about text and committing. So there's a new thing in text. So when you click on it, it automatically gives you, by default, the lorem ipsum text, sample text, so that you can see how the text is going to look. Even if you make a text box or you just simply double click, it's going to give you a default, so you can play with the fonts and the size to see how your text is going to look even before you type it. So talking about text, that's one of the good features. And then there's the new frame tool, by the way, and it's I think it was in InDesign already. Now it's in Photoshop. I'm not sure about whether it was in InDesign, but now you can just make frames. For example, you're designing a brochure. You make a couple of frames and just drag and drop your photos onto that frame from your Finder or Explorer, and it automatically resizes according to the frame, and it's just placeholders. So that's a new feature that would be great for designers.
Oh yeah, and I do believe as well that those features are over from InDesign. So it's stuff that, you know, if you're familiar with InDesign, you're familiar how it works. It's like Photoshop's working very similar now. So yeah, and it's really cool how when you do those frames, that you can drop the image in, and then you can scale the image within that frame, and you don't have to worry about, like, is it gonna fit? It holds the frame basically. It's like a placeholder. It's really cool.
Yep.
Yeah, to show,
and
like,
it's more, you know. So all right. So I was just going to say it's more efficient. Previously, we used to do it with clipping masks and stuff. So this year, what Photoshop has done is just making things more efficient, easier for people. That's it.
Yeah, and to show, like, I don't know, Jason, if you can see my screen, but I can show, like what Unmesh is talking about with, like, the type tool. When you select somewhere, it already fills in basically text there. So you're seeing like lorem ipsum if you do a text, you know, so you can do that. The other thing that's interesting with it is now you can actually see your fonts as you scroll through, right? The same thing with your blend modes. You can see your blend modes. Those guides that he was talking about is you can draw a guide. You draw it out, and then say we had an image from somewhere else that we brought in here. Well, I didn't mean to do that.
On the guide, actually.
Yeah, that's what I totally messed up there. So I wanted to drop it on the guide, and I didn't do that. But anyways, you drop it in the guide, and it just fits in the guide. So here we go. As my computer is freaking out right now. But anyways, so we got to take a break. I got stuff going. But you can see it's in the guide, great. Right? So it's in the guide.
Finally
so
worked.
It's really cool. And you can resize that. You can also we'll go into a little bit of some other of the changes, updates when we get back from break. We've got Unmesh here. We got Dave here. We're going to go into a couple more of the Lightroom and Photoshop updates. And then if you got any questions, just add them in the chat, and we'll get to that in the later segment.
When you need a tripod that is compact, that is portable enough to take with you anywhere, one that is adaptable to any situation, that will prove versatile enough for any shoot, and is compatible with your other gear, giving you freedom to create your own perspective. Look no further. Platypod Ultra does it all. Visit platypod.com for more info.
This segment of The Grid is brought to you by B&H Photo, the professional source since 1973.
Hey, we're back, and we're talking about the Adobe MAX updates for Photoshop and Lightroom. I got Unmesh and Dave here with me. Hey, before we went to break, I was showing you guys this, and it was kind of like my computer was going crazy, but I had to close out of some programs that I had open. And just to show you guys what I was talking about, so we drew out a guide, but then what's cool is you can select on this layer, you can transform it, and then it just fits within that guide, so it stays within that guide. So if you scale it, it remains in that guide. So there's no more of that having to, you know, jump in, jump out, resize, rescale. And there's a lot of cool things you can do. But yeah, so Unmesh, like we were talking about before, what else were you really excited about with Photoshop's update?
Speaking of just what you did right now, You were transforming it, right? Now you don't have to hold the shift key to maintain the proportions.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah.
So yeah, it's swapped. It swapped the undo. Now it's swapping this. You just have to, now if you want to change the proportions, you would hold the shift. If you want to keep the proportions, it's just by default. So that's big. That's a big change. People will have to get used to it.
Absolutely. And to show another thing that I was talking about earlier over here, what's cool about the blend modes now is if you look on the screen, you know, that photo that's up on the screen is, you know, normal, but you could just scroll through the blend modes right there and it shows it in real time. So if you see something that you like, which obviously I don't, but, you know, if you saw something, you just click on it and go, oh, I want that. So it's really cool. And again, you're not having to, you know, select it, see what it looks like, select it, see what it looks like. It's live. So very cool feature. Very cool. So Dave, the ones that you've seen or the ones that you've heard about, is there anything that's standing out for you?
Well, the one you just mentioned is something that I was going to say. The live preview of the blend modes is awesome.
Yeah, it's really
having an understanding of the blend modes is something a lot of people struggle with, but they're obviously very useful things. So having that live preview there, so you can quickly glance and go through and see which one you need for the purpose, is fantastic. I love that. So that's top of the list. Yeah, absolutely. What else is going on? What's that one you were explaining to me that I missed?
Well,
see if you can remember what it's called.
Well, so there is an interesting thing that I did want to talk about, because I do think that this is pretty neat, and I'm wondering how much of this is going to become, it's kind of a future thing. So one of the things that Camera Raw and Lightroom are now supporting is depth range masking, which basically is, you know, when you take a portrait mode on your iPhone and it kind of does that fake kind of blur kind of look, you know, it's actually applying a depth range mask to the image. Photoshop, Camera Raw, and Lightroom can now use that to refocus basically the plane. So it's going to be interesting because we're seeing this come up more and more now. In fact, I was telling Dave earlier that Dave's using this technology right now the last couple of days, and I don't even know if he knows he's
didn't even know.
Yeah.
I had no idea. The fact that it's doing it all by itself though is pretty phenomenal. And when we talked about it, I mentioned Parallax before, and it could potentially be used to create parallax images, to create something moving. So let me just try and understand. What they've done is they've come up with this algorithm that figures out the depth of your image, figures out perhaps from the focus what's close and what's far in your image, and then it masks one of those two things, perhaps the closer one. Is that what's happening?
That's exactly what's happening. And what's interesting is that's how that, you know, portrait mode on your iPhone works. I'm wondering, so the way, Dave, you're using it is Facebook just came out with 3D pictures, right?
So naturally I took a selfie, right?
Yeah, so you took it in portrait mode because that's the only way it'll work, right? So what Facebook is doing is interpreting that depth range mask and making a three-dimensional kind of looking image. So it's really cool, and now it's in Photoshop and it's in Lightroom. I'm wondering from you guys, so are both of you using any of this technology? I mean, do you guys have iPhones or a phone that has this capability?
Yeah. So
I'm not yet into it. Go ahead, Dave.
The way the iPhone's using it is by using the two lenses.
Yep.
So it's using one lens to focus on what's close, me in the selfie, and the other lens to focus on the background, and then knock that out of focus to create the fake depth of field, the fake bokeh. And it's trying to figure out from ranging and from mapping the image which lens to use on which part of the image. So to do that with an image that's already essentially flat, that wasn't captured with two lenses, like any, you know, DSLR image you're opening up into Photoshop. That's pretty phenomenal. It's pretty clever stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna try that as soon as I can.
So Unmesh, you're saying you're not using it yet, but
I'm not using. I have seen it. Actually, my phone has one, so I'm using the OnePlus, so I'm always a OnePlus fan. I was a OnePlus fan. So it has two cameras, and it does do a little bit of it, the portrait mode. But Facebook says it will be coming out with the Android update soon. So right now it's only available to iPhones, but it will be coming out with the 3D feature in Android too. So looking forward to that. It's really cool, and the way that Adobe can incorporate that into their softwares is amazing.
Right. And so my question to you guys is, so do you think that this merger of software-based effects in the files, as well as, you know, the cameras that we have today, I think it'd be really interesting when people like Canon and Nikon and the professional companies start really leveraging this technology, and it's not just Apple and the tech companies. Because
now that you've said that, it makes me think of the is it Blackmagic, the Blackmagic cameras, where they took a series of images at different apertures, and you could move your depth of field and you move your focus point after you'd taken the image. So I wonder if they tried it and it didn't work, and whether this is therefore going to work, because what was that? Perhaps 5 years ago that happened,
and
you haven't really seen it since.
It definitely feels like this is where the future is moving. You know, a lot of people are taking images on their phones. They're taking images on their devices. And I've even seen, you know, with Canon, they've come out with their dual pixel technology, with their dual pixel RAW, where they have the ability to focus afterwards as well. So I feel like this is the way we're kind of moving. And that's one of the things they did talk about at MAX, was really we're at that next phase, or that next age, where we're going to have things like augmented reality. We're going to have things like that, where we as artists, we as photographers, we as designers are going to have to embrace these new technologies, or it's just going to be like when we move from film to digital, or we move from, you know, print to a, you know, computer, you know. So what do you guys think? Do you guys think that this software-based, you know, algorithm-based processing of your photo, do you think that that's going to be more mainstream in the next few years?
I think it's going to be, because if you look at the RED camera especially, it already is moving forward. And I got the opportunity to experiment and play with the RED cameras. They do not have a thing called ISO. I mean, you can set it up later. That's one of the great features of a RED camera. The one that I was playing with was RED Helium. And it was amazing that you can set the ISO later. You can also set it on camera, but the raw files are huge, by the way. But yes, there's a feature in RED that allows you to set the ISO later, which is amazing. So this is ISO is now controlled. Focus is going to be controlled. So everything is going to be software-based, which is going to be amazing. Look, we came from manual focus to autofocus. Now it's going to be focus after in the post. So it's going to be great, and we'll be good doing it.
But it's going to be something that people are going to need to get used to. So from your perspective, as somebody who's fantastic at Photoshop, flipping it back to me being more of the photographer from that side, it's going to take the creative aspects away from the original picture. And although I'm not disagreeing at all, it's going to be wildly different, having to deal with everything like that afterwards, rather than be stood there in the place at the time and get it how I want it there, as close to how I want it as I can in camera. It'll be a case of standing there, take a picture, as long as you've composed it right, you can deal with everything later, which is weird, right?
I agree with you. That's actually where I'm at. Is I've got that internal debate going on in my mind, where it's one of those things where it sounds really cool, but at the same time, you're like, how is this going to change my workflow? How is this going to change the way I approach things? Usually, things like this actually make it better, you know, but I can see where there's going to be a resistance there to this, because it is something where you're manipulating things later. But you know, hey, Photoshop, that's what Photoshop is, right? So,
so I mean, you go ahead.
Oh, no. I mean, go ahead, Umesh.
I was just saying that you are the creative. If you want to do it right there and right then, you're welcome to do it. If you want to do it in post, well, it's your choice. It's absolutely under your control. Whatever you want to do, however you want to do it, just do it. It's fine. And when autofocus came in, I remember the film guys had a lot of resistance to it, especially when it comes to video. But now everybody is doing amazing autofocus, especially with the Canon's dual pixel autofocus. It's amazing in video. So everybody's using it now. So there's going to be resistance, but people are going to love it in the long run. And there can be so much creative stuff that can be done with it.
Oh yeah.
Well, you said there's going to be resistance, so watch me resist. Does it mean that you don't have to be a good photographer anymore, and you can correct any mistakes? You've got a safety buffer in post. You can deal with anything that you got wrong, whereas now you have to get things right. Not everything, but you have to get things more or less right. Your shutter speed, your aperture, your ISO, everything like that. So yeah, if you've got that safety buffer to deal with it in post, it means you don't have to get it right in the first place, which means a creative person has that creative aspect and the technical aspect, which is all of the settings and getting everything right. That's going to be taken away. And is it going to completely change the market and the industry for photographers? Because to be a good photographer, to sell your images and everything, you have to be good. You have to get it right. And if you don't have to get it right anymore, then how many more people are going to flood the market and the industry and make everything shrink that little bit, including the income? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you absolutely get it. But, the market is where the market is. We are not to judge, and we are not to say anything. It's going there, and people are going to be photographers. We cannot do anything about it. And every big company wants to sell their products, make money, and this feature will make them do so. So we have to adapt to it. The only way out is we have to get so much more better into it. So like more than the average, that there's going to be much more competition to it. So as a photographer, as a professional photographer, Dave, you're great. Your images are amazing. And if we can, obviously, we'll get much more creativity with it. And obviously, we're going to be much better. And people are going to choose us rather than them. So, people used to think, hey, now I've got autofocus, I can take pictures too. But that's wrong. We have taken a step further, and we have made the competition more tougher. So as long as the competition is healthy, we'll be fine.
You make an
irritatingly good point.
Yeah, I agree with you, Umesh. When you get down to it, at the end of the day, I think for me, it's going to be you cannot. Creativity is what the bottom line is. You can do stuff later in post, and you can, not get the settings right. Yes. But your image might not be as creative as somebody else's who put the time and the thought and the creativity into the image. And you can't fix that later. You can't fix creativity later. So exactly. I think that's where you get down to it, is the edge that people are going to have is not in the technical anymore. It's going to be in the creative. And I think that's where you get down to, is it's going to be, the future is in creativity. The future is not in technical.
Yeah. Two things have come to mind. One of them is the fact that it's kind of already there in one sense. On your iPhone, you can go in live mode and you can make a long exposure. So there are things that have already been trickling out that kind of relate to this. So I guess, that's one thing. But the other thing is, perhaps, and I'm going to use a polar bear as an example, perhaps what this will do is make the images more about the subject than about the creativity that it relates to. So, I wonder how many people have been stood in front of a polar bear and not been able to take a good picture of it, and then now snap any old picture and deal with it later and make it a good picture afterwards. Do you see what I mean? So it's more about the subject than it is about the planning and the creativity and the composition, that sort of stuff.
Well, I think those things will matter. Like, for example, I don't know with images, like even if you take it with your iPhone and change the depth later, you can't change the composition. You know, you could do little,
Exactly.
you could do little to change it, but you can't change the composition that much, you know? So I think that's when you get down to it. Yeah, I really think that the future and who will rise to the top in this game is going to be people who are focused on creativity and not focused on technical and the gear. That's just my opinion.
One thing it
Exactly.
will probably do, thinking back to my earlier days and thinking of Pete Treadway, who I used to be partners with in hybrid photography, we did wedding photography, and the amount of times in the early days that we, for example, we were inside and we had a high ISO, and then we went outside and it was a bright sunny day, and it took a few pictures before we remembered, oh, hang on a minute, these are all going to be massively overexposed. That's a good example of the kind of things that it could fix, this kind of technology could fix and could save people from, that could benefit the industry. So yeah, there's another one. See, I started
Dave,
arguing, and now I'm coming up with some points on side as well.
Yeah, so
Dave, you just
we're getting pretty deep here, but we do have to take a break. When we come back, we are going to be able to answer any of your questions. So we've been, if you got any questions for Unmesh, you got any questions for Dave, throw them in the chat. We're going to answer your questions. We'll probably still go back to this issue. I do want to talk about the Lightroom updates real quick when we get back, but after that, we're going to be answering your questions. So if you got anything, throw it in the chat and we'll answer your questions. See you guys in just a sec.
This segment of The Grid is brought to you by Canon.
Make sure you don't miss any episodes of The Grid by subscribing to Apple's podcast app or iTunes. It's free, and we even have a special audio-only version too. So sign up today.
Well, hey, we're back. We're talking about all the new exciting updates in Lightroom and Photoshop. And if you guys got any questions, we got Unmesh and Dave here to ask them anything you want to ask. So just jump in the chat and ask them a question. But before we get to that, we did want to talk about Lightroom Classic and Lightroom CC. Lightroom Classic got some updates. One that I'm really excited about is finally it has support for camera raw for the EOS R. So I've been processing those images. It also has support for the Nikon Z7 and other new lenses, new profiles. There is faster tethering on Canon for right now. I think they're going to go to other manufacturers, but right now they do have a faster tethering option for Canon. And I have not tested that out, so I don't know if it is faster, but it's supposed to be faster. And then The other thing is they have a single-step HDR Pano merge. So basically, if you're doing HDR Panos, you can do it in a single step rather than having to do each one independently. But yeah, so getting back to Unmesh and Dave. Well, first we got some comments. I think if we scroll up, we got some comments or questions. I see that Christy Kuna was saying, "Hey, Erik." Hey, Christy. I'm thinking that's either my wife or my daughter, and if it is my wife, I hope she feels better because she caught my cold. And Doc says, "Hey, everyone." We got Martin Williams saying, "Watching you, Dave."
That's my dad. Hi, Dad.
There you go. So, and let's see, we got Joe, hey from Denver. Massimo saying, hey from Roma. Let's see, we got Compton saying, hey from Chile, Winslow, UK.
Cool. Yeah, it's cold.
So Katie's asking, would love to hear Dave discuss this feature and how he uses it. Katie, could you kind of elaborate on that of which that feature is?
When did that come in?
Maybe something with, well, anyways, we'll see if she comes back in and asks that. But Stephanie's, for a wedding photographer like me, I don't have much time post-processing. It's not custom effective. So Dave, how do you deal with, I mean, you shoot some weddings, right? How do you deal with processing the images quick enough, but still processing them where you are being creative and you are being differentiating from everybody else?
Yeah, with great difficulty, to be honest. If you are using just Photoshop and you're loading every image into Adobe Camera Raw and then checking each one out, adjusting each one, sliding all the sliders all over the place, and then importing it into Photoshop and then making more adjustments, maybe some blemishing or maybe some spot healing, whatever you're going to be doing, it just takes a long time, really. And it's a couple of minutes an image, but it's a long time when there's, I don't know, for argument's sake, 1,000 images and you're going to take it down to about 300-400. It just takes an incredible amount of time. So perhaps these new features, this sort of automated sort of things that are going on, everything that's based on these algorithms, that it's going to make our lives easier as a photographer. But again, I still think kind of change and potentially damage the creativity is going to be beneficial overall. But I don't know. I need to try it all out and see exactly what we're talking about before I can make a good sound judgment on it.
Yeah, I mean, I
probably
think
going to be good.
We're definitely on the cusp of this new. It's just it's an evolution. It's like Peter Peter Treadway, who we all know. He was saying that you could say the same thing about Photoshop 1.0. This is the next step in the process. So, really at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about here is all these updates, all these things that make our cameras more efficient or able to do stuff later or our software more efficient or even plugins or presets. It's just an evolution, right? I mean, I know, Unmesh, you talked about that a lot when you were going over these new features. I think I saw you use the word efficiency a lot because I think you were like, you thought a lot of these new updates were making you more efficient, right?
Yes, actually, if there is something which can make you work faster, you can do it in lesser time, it would be great, because the more time you save, the more work you can do. For example, Dave was just talking about weddings. So now, when the features are more efficient, when the images load faster, or that there are features which can do it with just one slider, well, we can edit more images in less time, which eventually makes your income grow and makes you grow as a creative. So, these are important as a part of the evolution. Just like Dave was just saying about the ISO thing, it's very important. So earlier, people were complaining that anybody can capture any images and get it right in post because of the great ISO performance. But now, looking at the advantage side of it, we can save a lot of images that we accidentally destroyed. So it's important to make us grow as a creative.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing is it does. allow more people to capture, you know, more, I guess, what you would call balanced photos. They're not dark or light or something like that. But what it's allowing is wedding photographers a tool to shoot in a lot of venues where they before couldn't capture great images. So it's kind of a give and take, right?
Like I said, it's that safety buffer, isn't it? It means you've got a lot more keepers from the images you shot. And I guess thinking about it just now, something that's common in human nature is that we're quite averse in general to change. And this is change. And it means that because it's going to all be done for us, we're going to unlearn things that we've spent years learning and learning how to fix these mistakes that we make in our photography using Photoshop. It's going to do it for us. So it's kind of, I don't know. I'm still right in the middle. I still need to try it.
I know. You are literally in the middle, and I think me and Unmesh are trying to push you to, no, this is the future, dude. Come on, come with us. So, hey, Dave Whitaker is asking an interesting question. He says, can you recommend a book or books for people just starting Photoshop? I could tell you I definitely can, because I know the guy who wrote it. But Scott has a great book on how do you do that in Photoshop. And what's great about it is it's very short and concise, and the main things that you're going to use in Photoshop. Scott's very good about teaching that. But I will say this, if you're not just looking for a book, one thing that I'm hearing a lot of people, we're hearing a lot of members, new members talk about that they love is Scott did a class on learning Photoshop in 1 hour. And what's cool about that class is actually in our free membership. So right now you can go sign up for KelbyOne if you're not a KelbyOne member. There is a free membership tier, and it includes 12 full-length classes, and that's one of the classes that's in there. And people are raving over that class. They're like, I didn't know, I knew how to use Lightroom. I didn't know how to use Photoshop. I watched this class, and in 1 hour, I felt like I knew Photoshop. So, and speaking of KelbyOne, and instructors, we really didn't talk about these two guys that are here with me, Unmesh and Dave. Unmesh has an awesome class on KelbyOne, just came out a little while ago, about all these, it's called like jaw-dropping techniques, right? And it's one of those things where it's one of those where Unmesh goes through and shows you how to do those techniques that everybody's like, wow, that's a cool look. And he basically walks you through how to do it very quickly and gets to the point. And people are loving that class. And then Dave, you got a class coming out tomorrow, right? Tomorrow,
yeah.
On drone photography. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to see the response from that.
So yeah, these guys are, the people are loving, well, I know Unmesh, people are loving your class. So,
Thank you.
Dave, your class is online right now.
What?
There you go.
Wow, congratulations.
Awesome. Nice.
Looking forward to watch it, by the way.
Good.
Yeah, and I will tell you that Dave is one of those guys with his drone where he is getting those cinematic type of pictures. The other thing with Dave with his drone is I was just with Dave when we were in Slovenia, and I remember turning to Dave and saying, I did not see any no drone fly zones or anything. You need to get that drone up in the sky, and he's flying it all over Slovenia. It was great.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. But yeah, we need to take a break. When we get back, we're gonna jump into these questions. I got if you got anything, just throw it in the chat, and we'll get to your questions right away. See you guys in just a sec.
Hey guys, Larry Becker here, and I just finished doing a class about this awesome new camera, the EOS R from Canon. We're going to talk about the exclusive stuff that this camera has that no other camera has, like the multi-function bar. And we're going to talk about the new RF mount lenses, mount adapters so you can use your legacy lenses, the new FV flexible shooting priority mode. You're going to learn tips and tricks and really all kinds of stuff about this new camera. We're going to dig into the features that you really want to know about. It's all about the EOS R, and it's exclusively on KelbyOne.
everybody. Scott Kelby here with Mr. Larry Becker.
And I'm here because we have an awesome new class for you, all about travel photography, but not what you think.
Right, it's about traveling right and making sure you have the things that you need, that you get where you gotta go, and we cover a whole bunch of stuff that'll really make your photo trips much, much better.
Things like, which bag should you carry? If you go big, what do you add into the bag?
Right, and if you go light and you're gonna be with your family, you don't wanna carry that much gear, what's the solution there? I'm gonna show you exactly how to pack it, what I do to make the most of these trips. And I also break down all the gear that I use. I'm gonna take in camera bodies, lenses, the whole 9 yards, and a bunch of little accessories you're gonna wanna know about. At the end of the shoot, at the end of the day, what's your backup strategy? How do you protect your images when you get back to your hotel room at night?
And then we're gonna talk about what you do when you get home with your images.
The class is called The Photographer's Guide to Traveling Right.
And it's exclusively on KelbyOne.
The biggest thing that I enjoy about headshot photography is probably dealing with faces. My kind of go-to setup for headshots is definitely the clamshell. It's going to cast a really beautiful light onto your subject, and having the right gear to do that is incredibly important. True art behind capturing professional poses is creating visual lines to bring the viewer's eye up to the face of the person in the photograph. Natural retouching is a big proponent to doing corporate headshots. They're not expecting a lot of retouching. What they would like is to look like a well-rested version of themselves. And that can be done very easily by just keeping the retouching natural and not going overboard. Hey guys, Christy from Shark Pixel here. I want you to come check out my new latest class all about corporate headshots and corporate retouching, only on KelbyOne.com.
This segment of The Grid is brought to you by Platypod, the world's most compact tripod base.
All right, we're back. Final segment here for The Grid today. We got Unmesh and Dave. We're going to run through questions now. Before we get there, Katie Jones commented, Unmesh said, indeed, Unmesh's class on KelbyOne will change your life. So that was a great comment. And then Stephanie says, Unmesh is a Photoshop god. So,
That's a compliment.
And then Daniel's saying, can't wait to watch your class, Dave. So he's really excited.
Awesome,
for
thank
that.
you. I just checked. They weren't lying. It's up. Go and watch it.
Yeah. So, a couple questions here. So, Svetlana's asking, how about Lightroom in your camera?
Well, I guess that could be a thing, couldn't it? I mean, you've got Lightroom mobile, not mobile, mobile.
Oh yeah.
So if you can put it on a phone, if you can, sync your camera to, well, you don't. I was thinking you need to sync it to your images. You don't. They're already in the camera. So that could be a thing, but.
I mean, we already kind of have that with our mobile phones, and that we have Lightroom Mobile and our mobile phones, and you have a camera that'll shoot RAW to your mobile camera. So we kind of have that. So integrating that with a still camera, I mean, I could see where, or a mirrorless or DSLR, we could do that. I will say that the wireless and Bluetooth capabilities of the cameras would kind of like be the bridge there, where it would just shoot your images over right to whatever you're editing on for Lightroom. So that's where I see the future going, definitely. Which leads us to a question from Mark for Unmesh. What digital pad do you use when you're editing in Photoshop? Do you use a digital pad?
Yes. So right now I'm using the Wacom Intuos Pro, the medium size that works for me. And, I just got the one that I had. So I was in Photoshop World actually, and somebody gifted it to me, so I'm using it. And before this as well, I was using a Wacom Intuos Pro, the small one, and it's just the one that I use, and it works well for me.
Awesome. Dave, do you use anything?
I'm pretty sure I have the Intuos Pro as well. That's the one with the screen on it, right? Replicated.
The screen is, I guess, the Cintiq.
That's right. That's the one I have. It's right there. Yeah, I'm looking at you on it.
There you go.
Right there. Yeah.
So, Greg's asking Unmesh. You mentioned very large file sizes with the new ISO later software. is there a concern that post-shot software technology will outpace realistic storage space?
I mean, so here's the thing. Storage space has gone cheaper, like cheaper as hell over the years. So as this technology progresses, I'm sure there will be one another technology about storage space that's going to make it more cheaper. So it's not going to be a problem. So everything is evolving at the same time.
Yeah. Dave, you have anything to add to that?
I agree. I mean, it's been going since about the 70s that the price has halved and the capacity has doubled and things like that. There are all these laws in computing about it. Yeah, it's absolutely true. It's going to happen. But then you look at the other aspect of it, which is the fact that when you buy a computer now, it doesn't actually have as much storage space because everything's moving to cloud-based. So it's more an issue of getting server speeds and broadband speeds that are going to allow you to transmit these much larger files to wherever the cloud server is, rather than onto your local hard drive. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's where, you know, like in the future, like you're talking about, or even where we are now, we're at the point where we're paying for storage, but we're not paying for a device anymore. We're paying for storage in the cloud, you know, and that's kind of where that's where everything's moving. You know, that's where you see the future moving.
Exactly.
So, so Dylan's asking, with all the updates, any KelbyOne tours coming up? I can tell you, Scott has a new Photoshop tour, and he'll be obviously using all the new Photoshop updates as well. We'll be doing a KelbyOne class on all the new Photoshop. So definitely over on KelbyOne, you can check it out. But before we go too far, I do some housekeeping items. We do have the giveaways. So we've got the Platypod. So we're going to be giving away a Platypod. Dave's going to be giving away a Platypod. I have no idea how you're giving away a Platypod, Dave, but I know the way we are.
I'm giving away the Platypod that you're giving away.
All right, awesome. So if you want to win that Platypod, or you want to win the Lens Pro to Go gift card, if you go to KelbyOne.com/contest, you go in there, you fill out the form that's on the website, and you can win the contest. Just tell us in the comments what you'd like to win, and we'll make sure that we send it off to you. Another thing that's going on, which I'm trying to get to it right now. Let's see who sent that to me. Is Platypod. Platypod has a contest going on right now, and there was a link to it that somebody sent me, and now I can't find it.
I can tell you about it if you can hear me.
Yeah, go for it, Dave. You know about it. There's a contest running right now about reflections, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's reflections, and you can win a Platypod for yourself and for your friend. You have to go on Instagram to Platypod Tripods on Instagram. Upload a picture, tag them in it, and tag your friend. And if you win, you and your friend both win the Platypod. And it's all about reflections theme. But it's on the Platypod Instagram.
Oh, here you go. Yep, here's the post about it right here. So yeah, so you go to Platypod Tripods on Instagram right there. There's a post about reflections. They tell you how to enter. Follow that and do that, and you're entered to win a Platypod. And again, if you're in the UK or Europe, there is now something where you can get a Platypod right to your door without all that upcharging. Right?
Amazon Prime, straight to your door next day.
Yep. And soon to be coming from India, right, Unmesh?
I hope so. I really hope so.
Yeah, we'll see.
I got to try that.
Well, hey guys, what is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you guys wanted to talk about these new updates? Trying to think if there's anything we missed from you guys. Anything, Unmesh, that stood out? Anything else that you might have missed?
You know, there's a new feature in Photoshop, especially we as a creative work on larger screens, 4K screens or 5K screens. So there's a new feature to make the UI bigger so there's a checkbox. When you go to the Photoshop preferences, inside of the preferences, when you change the UI size to small, large, when you just increase or decrease the size, so there's a checkbox called Scale UI to Fonts. So when you make the fonts bigger in Photoshop, the UI, the icons also become bigger in Photoshop CC 2019, making it very easy on the eyes because, we are going towards, and there are already some 8K screens, and as we move higher in resolutions, the icons go smaller and smaller and difficult on the eyes. So that's going to really help with larger resolution screens as a creative.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, that was one of those new features where they had already done where you could do the text, but you couldn't do the icons, right? That was
Yes,
the thing.
yes.
Yeah. So now it's like the best of both worlds where you're getting that. And I agree with you, Mesh, especially with these higher resolution screens. Everything's just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So... But yeah, so hey, if you guys want to learn more about these two guys, first and foremost, like if you look on my screen, if you want to go watch Unmesh's class on KelbyOne, it's right there. You got all these lessons where he goes through all the different techniques, tips, tricks, basically showing you those magic effects. And then I should go right here. And there it is, Dave Williams right there. How to get cinematic looks from your drone. So he walks you through everything. We actually, that class, you guys were in Italy, right? Filming that class?
Yeah, we were in the Dolomites. So it was around the time Scott was doing his workshop in Venice. Me and Juan took the cameras and we went up to the Dolomites for a few days around the mountains and the snow, got all kinds of scenery. So yeah, it was great fun, really good.
So a couple other questions that we have before we wrap up, and we only have a couple minutes, but when are the updates coming? Kathy was asking. They're already there. That's the cool thing about the cloud and about the Creative Cloud. The minute they came out, they were up there. You just go up to right here in your Creative Cloud. You can see that I've updated, I've updated Photoshop, but I have not updated my Illustrator, InDesign XD. But all you would do is just click on that button, update, and it'll update to the new version. It's there right now. Another question, and this was something that we didn't touch on, but they did talk about, and I don't know, Unmesh, if you saw some of this too, was there is Photoshop coming for the iPad. So
yes, I heard about it. Yes.
Yep. So somebody's asking about release date. I have not heard a release date. Have you?
Nope.
No, I haven't heard a release.
I know that
it is coming.
I know that Terry White was demoing it, and so he's probably already given a release date. If not, he'll be one of the first people to put it out there. He's a great person to follow anyway, Terry White.
Yep. So you guys on social, if people want to follow you, so your Instagram, your Facebook, whatever, where can they follow you?
Dave, you go first.
If you look for Capture with Dave on anything, you'll find me. So Capture with Dave on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or capturewithdave.com.
So all one word, Capture with Dave?
Capture with Dave.
All right, and you, Unmesh, what about you?
You can find me at Pix Imperfect, Pix, Pix, and then Imperfect. So it's on all of my platforms, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, all the same letters. And if you're finding any difficulty searching me, you can just type in Photoshop tutorials on YouTube, and you'll find me. The first or the second one will be there.
Yeah, I know. If you type it in, if you type his name too, Unmesh Dinda, it pops right up. There you go. So I think your classes, I just searched for it. It was like second on Google. So very cool. All right. Well, thanks, guys. This has been great. This is awesome. So this is cool, something right? Where we.
This is amazing.
Let's do this. Let's do this every Wednesday.
There you go. So this is something, and I want to give a big shout out to the team here because we threw this together and really quick. We didn't know if we could do it where we could remote in multiple people and have this all working. And the whole team got it together. Jason, we have Juan over there, Christina, Steve, the whole team. I mean, they all threw it together real quick. Even Ron, Eric, abandoned us, but he got it up and running. But yeah, so thanks you guys for stopping by, and
it's great to be there.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome, guys. So we'll see you guys next week here on the grid. Not sure who's going to be here, but we'll just check on social, and we'll be here next week at 4 o'clock on the grid. See you guys next week.